Hello, my name's Martin Berry. I'm a theatre director and I lead the participation team at Nottingham Playhouse.
Hello, I'm Alice Saxton and I'm a performer and a theatre facilitator.
Hi, I'm Sharon White. I'm a director, facilitator and a teacher.
And welcome to this special interactive digital workshop based on the Nottingham Playhouse production, A Private Peaceful. This workshop will last for about an hour altogether, and all you need is a big space and big imaginations. We will walk you through the process, we'll let you know when to pause this film and when to play again. And remember that if you want to find out a little bit more about the show and about the story, you can download the Insight Pack from the Nottingham Playhouse website. And talking of story, let's hear a little bit more about the plot, just in case you don't already know it. Here's Alice.
The Peaceful brothers, Tomo and Charlie, have a tough rural childhood, facing the death of their father, financial hardship and a cruel landlord. Their fierce loyalty to each other pulls them through, until one day they both fall for the same girl. And then the Great War comes. We join 18-year-old Private Tomo Peaceful in the trenches as he tells us a story of courage, devotion and sibling rivalry on what may be his last night on Earth. So it's quite a tale. I'll be back later.
Thanks, Alice. So, the Great War, World War I, trench warfare. Millions of people were killed and millions more were left without their sons, husbands and their loved ones. Our first activity for you all is a word quiz. Now, in order to do this quiz, you need to get yourselves into smaller groups, let's say between 3 and 6 people in each group. So, while you get into your groups, you're going to hit pause on this film. When you've got your groups, you're going to press play again. Okay? Go. And we're back, and you're in your groups. Brilliant. Okay, here we go. So, what we're going to do is, we will call out a word or a phrase that was used by the soldiers in the trenches, and then you in your group have 10 seconds to discuss and see if you can work out what that word actually meant. So, for example,
Egg was the name of a hand grenade and crump hole was the name of a crater left after an explosion.
Got it? Good. So we call out a word or phrase, you have 10 seconds to come up with what you think it might mean. So, the first word is whiz-bang.
Your 10 seconds are up, so let's hear some of your answers. Yeah, really good answers. So it actually means a fast bullet or shell, and that's because it would make a whiz-bang sound, so it whizzed through the air and then bang as it exploded.
Your next word, and you'll have 10 seconds again, what do you think soldiers meant when they used the word flea bag? Okay, time's up. Shout them out. What do you think flea bag means? Great. Okay, good ideas. I'll tell you, some of you might have got it. It was the name for a sleeping bag. Maybe not surprising, because often the sleeping bags were full of fleas.
Are you ready for your third phrase? It's copping a packet. So your 10 seconds are up. Let's hear some of your answers. You are quite close. So it actually means getting killed. So it's quite a sad one.
Okay, the next one, no man's land. No man's land, 10 seconds. Okay, that's your time up. I bet a few people got this one. What do you think for no man's land? Brilliant, thank you for sharing those ideas. No man's land was the space between the trenches, between the opposing trenches was called no man's land.
And our final phrase is bum fodder. That's the end of your 10 seconds, so let's hear some of your answers. So surprisingly, it has nothing to do with bums. Bum fodder is boring paperwork, and usually what they would say was that it was bump.
Great job. I bet you got some, maybe you didn't get some of the others. Let's go over to Sharon now to talk about movement.
Private Peaceful features a cast of 6 who take you on a journey. They use their bodies, they use their voices to bring the whole story to life. They go to different locations, they go to different scenes. We're going to speak to Elle, the director, and she's going to take you through a few things.
So we can't obviously tell our audience where we are with detailed set. So it is up to the actors to tell us where we are. And I describe it as kind of imaginary jumping off points. So if you are going from a church to a graveside, we have like a level and they are sitting in a pew in the church and then they just have to stand up onto that level and they're looking down into the grave. And that's a kind of very simple physical move, but then there's obviously all the truth that they need to bring to that moment. What is it to sit at your father's funeral? Then what is it to be outside looking down into his grave? So I would say there's the kind of top layer of how we kind of in the picture tell the story with your body, but then there's all of the emotional truth that creates the kind of physical nuance around that as well. So one of the big challenges of this show is that the second half essentially takes place on the front line of World War I. So how do you, with 7 actors, 6 actors most of the time, tell the story of frontline warfare in the trenches? I would say it's an absolute collaboration between sound, lights, actors, so how we do the movement, the design. We've got sandbags, kind of sections of sandbags which suggest the wall of the trench, and then a piece of barbed wire that can fly in and out, so you get that sense of a kind of narrow space. So the actors can work within that. We know we've got all these resources at our fingertips on how to create that sense of terror, in fact, that these men had to live in. And we spoke to a historian last week, and it's not just the terror, it's the unbelievable boredom. The days and days and days of nothing happening. You kind of have the kind of outer layer of the physical storytelling, but it's then getting the actors to really dig deep inside these characters and know what it is to live in that place for weeks and months on end. One of the challenges, having so many scenes, is that you have to change location all the time. I mean, we were laughing yesterday. I think we had a scene that lasted 3 pages and we were like, this is so luxurious, we're just talking, you know, because in rehearsals we're constantly working out how to shift. As an example, I was just talking about the trenches, and we meet them mostly obviously in the British trenches, but there is a moment where they go into the German trench, and how to create the journey from over the top into no man's land and then coming down into a German trench. So in that instance, we've changed location by they come out of the British trench, they travel up over no man's land, and then through a kind of collaboration with lights, sound, music, everything, the perspective shifts, and then as we see them coming down stage, they're actually coming towards the German trench. That's just one example of how we change locations.
Over to you. We're going to make some shapes this time, and I want you to stay in your quiz groups. So for instance, if I say the word grenade, you can go on the floor and you can make the shape of a grenade, or you can stand up and make the shape of a grenade. You'll have about 20 seconds for each of these. So get ready, I'm going to say the first one, grenade. Bomb shelter. A giant flea. An explosion. And a horse. Great job, everybody. And I particularly like the shape of the flea. And also the horses. They were quite interesting too. Anyway, back to Alice.
Thanks, Sharon. Good job on the fleas. So now we need to think bigger and work together as a whole team. What I'd like you to do is to create 3 tableaus. A tableau is like a frozen image, and the images I'd like you to create are a battlefield, a beautiful countryside, and a graveyard. You'll have 10 minutes to create these. Perhaps one of you will be a person frozen in action, or an object, or a piece of the landscape like in the last task. But the key here is that everyone works together to create one big image. Once you're finished, come back to me. So just a reminder, you have 10 minutes to create 3 tableaus: a battlefield, a beautiful countryside, and a graveyard. Press pause now, and I'll see you in 10. Okay, so now everyone needs to spread out to the edges of the room. Has everyone spread out? Are you all at the edges? Good. So I'm going to call out the 3 landscapes I've asked you to create, and I'm going to do that in a random order. When I call one of them out, you all have to run into the middle of the room and get into position as quickly as you can. I'm going to get faster calling them out each time, so you need to be listening and paying attention. Are we ready? Battlefield. Countryside. Graveyard. Amazing! Your images are so lovely. Okay, so now I'm going to get faster and I'm going to call them out randomly, so make sure you're paying attention. Countryside. Graveyard. Battlefield. Graveyard. Battlefield. Countryside. Graveyard. Countryside. Battlefield. Graveyard. And stop. Lovely, brilliant. Isn't it amazing what we can do with our bodies? So I'm going to pass you over to Martin now, and you're going to make some noise.
Thanks, Alice. Now, as well as bodies, the performers in Private Peaceful make a lot of racket. War is a noisy business. Sometimes soldiers were left deafened or hard of hearing by the sheer volume of the noise all around them in the battlefield. For this next exercise, you need to be back in small groups of between 3 and 6 people. So if you pause me and pause this film while you get back into those groups. Go. Okay, great, you're in your groups. So in a moment, you're going to pause me again and you'll have about 8 minutes in your group to create 2 soundscapes. Now, a soundscape is basically creating the atmosphere through sounds of a certain place. It might include words and talking, or it might not. It's more likely to include things like whistling, scraping, stamping, banging on the walls, whatever you can think of to create that atmosphere. Your 2 soundscapes that you're going to create are, firstly, a scary night in the trenches, and the second one is a welcome home party. So, a scary night in the trenches, a welcome home party, 8 minutes, and once you've got them and you've worked them out, come back to me and press play again. Off you go. Great, welcome back everyone. You should hopefully have created some brilliant soundscapes, and now it's time to share them with each other. So you're going to pause me again while each group in turn shares their soundscapes. And a suggestion from me is that those who are listening you should close your eyes so you can really hear the sounds and get involved in those soundscapes with your ears. Okay, pause me while you share, come back once you've done them. Okay everyone, sounding good? Great. It's interesting maybe to consider what, when you were listening, felt really effective and what was maybe confusing or not as clear. Something to consider and talk about after the workshop. Here's another little chat with the director, Elle Weil, and she's going to talk about voices and sound in the show.
So I've talked a lot about how we use our bodies as actors and how the design, whether it be light, sound, the set, the costume, tells us where we are at any given point. But we can also obviously use voice, and how the actors use their voice not only helps us to invest in where they are emotionally in the journey of the play, but also where they are physically. So how you use your voice when you're under attack is very different to how you use your voice when you're telling someone you're in love with them. We also have lots of music in the show, so they are singing as well. So yeah, we're asking a huge amount of the company, but hopefully to good ends. We're really lucky in our rehearsal room because our sound designer, Dan Balfour, and our composer, Frank Moon, have been with us. I kind of say 80% of the time they're really present, so they're constantly responding to the work that we're doing in the room, and whether that's a piece of music coming in as underscore that then turns into a song, or whether that's how to go from 1916 war to early 1900s children's playground. To have the sound makers in the room to support that is like, just lifts our rehearsal process so much. And it also means that instead of arriving at tech with a kind of piece that then all of those layers have to fit into, it's a proper tapestry because they're weaving it into the work that we're doing as we go.
We have come to the end of this special digital interactive workshop.
We hope you've had fun learning about drama and theatre making and using your bodies and your voices and your imaginations.
Until next time,
Bye.
bye.